I asked AI, and not only did I want to know how the wealthy get wealthier through money printing, I wanted it to give me a story through the lens of a dollar bill getting injected into
the system
through a stimulus check that many of us are familiar with now since COVID. And I wanted the AI to shed some light on the history and how we got here, as well as, make it a little fun. And with that, I will read you what it spit out, but I haven't fact checked everything, but this is a good starting spot, I think. And once again, I'm Jack Alwell. If you've been liking this channel, please subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. With that, let's get into the dollar's tale. I am a dollar, a crisp digital entity born in the year 2025. But my story begins long before that, back when my ancestors were tethered to something tangible, something gleaming gold. The US dollar wasn't always the free-floating fiat currency it is today. Let's rewind to understand how I got here. In 1792, the United States established the dollar as its official currency under the Coinage Act, pegging it to a bimetallic standard of gold and silver. A dollar was worth about 1/20th of an ounce of gold or 1.5 ounces of silver, a promise etched into law. This was a time when money meant metal. You could hold it, weigh it, trust it. The gold standard as we know it solidified in 1900 with the Gold Standard Act, which made gold the sole backing for the dollar, ditching silver entirely. $1 equaled 1/20.67 ounces of gold, a fixed value that tethered the economy to a finite resource. It was a system of discipline. The government couldn't just print more dollars unless it had the gold to back them. But that discipline didn't last. In 1933, during the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt took the U.S. off the gold standard domestically. People were hoarding gold, banks were collapsing, and the economy needed flexibility. Executive Order 6102 forced citizens to turn in their gold coins and bullion for paper dollars at $20.67 per ounce. Then the government promptly revalued gold to $35 an ounce, a slight devaluation of the dollar that injected cash into the system overnight. If my ancestors' first taste of freedom from that shiny metal, though internationally, the gold link lingered. After World War II, the Bretton Woods system in 1944 tied the dollar to gold again, but indirectly this time. Foreign governments could swap $35 for an ounce of gold while the dollar became the world's reserve currency. It worked until the 1960s when the Vietnam War spending and Great Society programs pushed the U.S. to print more dollars than it could redeem. By 1971, the jig was up. President Nixon temporarily suspended the dollar's convertibility to gold on August 15th, a suspension that became permanent. The dollar became fiat, backed not by gold, but by faith in the U.S. government and its economy. Since then, my kind has multiplied endlessly, created by keystrokes at the Federal Reserve, untethered to anything physical. By 2025, I'm a product of this fiat world, born in a system where cash injections, like the one that created me, are routine. The Fed lowers interest rates, buys bonds, or Congress passes stimulus bills, flooding the economy with new dollars. But where do I go? And who do I serve? That's my story, starting with a poor woman named Jane. I came into existence on March 19th, 2025. Funny how I know the exact date, isn't it? I wasn't printed as a physical bill. I'm a digital dollar, a blip in a government database, part of a $1 trillion stimulus package Congress passed to boost the economy after a shaky post-pandemic recovery. Inflation's been hovering at 4%, unemployment stuck at 6%, and rents eating up half of people's incomes. The plan was simple: give every American adult $1,000 to spend, hoping it'd trickle up and out. I'm assigned to Jane, a 32-year-old single mother in Cleveland, Ohio. She works part-time at a grocery store, earning $15 an hour, barely enough to cover up her $900 monthly rent for a cramped two-bedroom apartment. The stimulus hits her bank account via direct deposit, and I'm one of the dollars in that $1,000 windfall. Jane's thrilled. Her checking account hasn't seen a balance over $200 in months. She logs into her bank app, sees the money, and immediately schedules a payment. $900 to who? The landlord, Mr. Patel, due in 3 days. I'm tagged for that rent payment. My first mission in the world. On March 22nd, I leave Jane's account in a flash of electronic signals zipping through the banking system to Mr. Patel's account at First National Bank. Jane feels a brief relief. She won't face an eviction notice this month. For me, it's a fleeting moment of purpose. I helped Jane stay housed, kept a roof over her and her son's heads. But my journey's just beginning, and I'm about to learn how short-lived my time with the poor really is. Mr. Patel, a 50-year-old immigrant who owns 3 rental properties, gets my $900. Well, me and 899 siblings. He's not rich, not by 2025 standard. His properties net him $2,000 a month after expenses, supplementing his day job as a mechanic. But he's got debts. A $200,000 mortgage on his Cleveland triplex, with monthly payment of $1,200 at 5% interest. On March 25th, he logs into his bank and schedules a payment to his lender, Big Bank Corp. I'm bundled into that $1,200, whisked away from Mr. Patel's account to Big Bank's coffers. At Big Bank, I don't sit idle. The bank's a machine churning dollars like me into profit. My $1,200 joins billions in deposits, but banks don't just hold cash. They lend it out or invest it. Big Bank's got a fractional reserve ratio of 10%, meaning it keeps $120 in reserve and can lend or invest the rest. I'm part of the $1,080 that gets funneled into a pool of capital. By March 28th, I'm allocated to a mortgage-backed security, or MBS, a bundle of home loans packaged and sold to investors. The housing market's hot in 2025. Prices are up 20% since 2020, driven by low interest rates and cash injections like the one that birthed me. My value helps inflate that bubble a little more. The MBS is snapped up by a hedge fund, Elite Capital, on April 1st. Elite, run by a team of Ivy League grads who manage $50 billion for pension funds, billionaires, and corporations. They're betting on real estate, stocks, and bonds, all assets that soar when new money floods the system. I'm now a tiny fraction of a $10 million investment, earning Elite a 7% annual return as housing prices climb. The fund's CEO, Rebecca Lang, pockets a $5 million bonus this year, her net worth climbing past $100 million. Her shareholders, wealthy families, tech moguls, and institutional investors see their portfolios swell also. By April 15th, I'm effectively owned by the top 1%. My brief stint with Jane, a distant memory. How does this keep happening? It's not random. I'm following a pattern economists call the Cantillon effect. New money doesn't spread evenly. When I'm injected into the system, I start with people like Jane, but they spend me fast on necessities like rent. That spending flows to landlords, businesses, and banks who channel me into assets, stocks, real estate, bonds. In 2025, the stock market's hitting record highs with the S&P 500 at 6,000, up 50% in 5 years. Home prices in Cleveland had jumped from $150,000 to $240,000 since 2020. Meanwhile, Jane's wages still $15 an hour, barely budging with inflation. The wealthy own those assets. The top 10% of Americans hold 70% of the stock market and 80% of real estate wealth. When I inflate those prices, their net worth balloons. Jane's $1,000 stimulus gave her a month's breathing room, but it gave Rebecca Lane and her ilk millions. I'm not mad at Jane. She needed me. I'm mad at the system that ensures I always end up with the rich. And the story continues. I'm now a spec in Elite Capital's $10 million mortgage-backed security, a tiny cog in a machine that's churning out wealth for the already wealthy. It's April 15th, 2025, and I'm starting to see the bigger picture. Elite Capital doesn't just sit on me, they're players in high-stake games. The hedge fund analysts, sipping $6 lattes in a glass-walled office overlooking Manhattan, decide to leverage their MBS position. They borrow $20 million more from a mega bank, let's call it Global Finance, at a rock bottom 2% interest rate, using the MBS as collateral. My $1,080 chunk is now part of a $30 million bet on rising housing prices. By May 1st, I'm tangled up in a derivatives trade. Elite Capital packages their MBS into a collateralized debt obligation, or CDO, slicing it into tranches sold to institutional investors, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and the ultra-rich. I'm in the senior tranche, the safest slice, promised a steady 5% return. A Norwegian pension fund snaps it up, wiring $15 million to Elite Capital. The fund's manager, a guy named Lars with a Fjord View office, doesn't know I exist, but I'm helping pad his fund's returns and his reputation. Meanwhile, Elite pockets a 2% management fee and a 20% cut of the profits. That's $600,000 straight to Rebecca Lane's team, with her share boosting her personal account at Goldman Sachs. I'm not done moving. On June 10th, the Norwegian fund gets its quarterly payout, $187,500, of which I'm a fractional part. They reinvest it, buying shares in a tech giant, Neurotech, whose stocks soared 30% in 2025 thanks to AI breakthroughs. Neurotech CEO, a 40-year-old billionaire named Ethan Voss, owns 10% of the company. His stake now worth $12 billion. My presence in that stock purchase nudges its price up a hair, adding a few thousand to Ethan's fortune. He celebrates by buying a third vacation home in Aspen, financed with a loan from, you guessed it, Global Finance. The bank uses deposits like Mr. Patel's to fund it, closing the loop. By July 1st, I've lost track of myself. Am I in Ethan's stock portfolio? The mortgage on his Aspen chalet? A dividend payment to a Saudi prince who owns Neurotech shares? All I know is I'm far from Jane's hands, circulating in a stratosphere of wealth where dollars like me multiply through interest, dividends, and capital gains. Jane's $1,000 stimulus is long spent, but I'm still working, only now I'm working for the rich. I've been around for 3 months now, and I'm starting to feel used. Not by Jane. She needed me, and I'm proud I helped her. But the system that yanked me from her grasp and funneled me to people who don't even know I'm there. How did this happen? I've got some theories pieced together from the chatter I overhear in bank servers and trading force. First, there's the Cantillon effect I mentioned earlier. When new money like that $1 trillion stimulus enters the economy, it doesn't spread like butter on toast. It hits the ground unevenly, landing first with people like Jane, who spent it on basics: rent, groceries, gas. That's where I started. But those basics aren't where wealth grows. Jane's rent payment didn't make her richer, it just kept her afloat. Mr. Patel didn't get much richer either. He's got his own bills. The real winners are further up the chain: banks, funds, and asset owners, because that's where money lingers and multiplies. Take housing. In 2025, the average US home price is $450,000, up from $300,000 in 2020. That $1 trillion stimulus spread across 125 million households gave Jane her $1,000, but it also pushed demand for homes and apartments. Landlords like Mr. Patel raised rents. His triplex now pulls $1,000 per unit, not 900. Banks lend more, fueling construction and flipping. Hedge funds like Elite Capital buy up properties and securities tied to them. The result? Asset prices climb, and the wealthy, who own 80% of real estate wealth, see their net worth jump. Jane's still renting. Her wages flat at $15 an hour, while Ethan Voss's property portfolio grows by millions. Then there's the stock. The S&P 500's at 6,000, a 50% rise since 2020, fueled by cheap money from the Fed. That $1 trillion didn't go to Jane. It went to corporations via tax breaks, bond purchases, and low rates. Neurotech stock soared because investors had cash to burn, and Ethan's billions grew without him lifting a finger. The top 10% of Americans own 70% of stocks, so every point the market climbs is a windfall for them. Jane doesn't own stocks. Her $1,000 went to rent, not a Robinhood account. Inflation's another kicker. It's 4% in 2025, eating into Jane's buying power. Her groceries cost $300 a month now, up from $250 2 years ago. Meanwhile, the wealthy don't feel it. They're insulated by assets that outpace inflation. A $450,000 house becomes $468,000 in a year. Ethan's $12 billion stock stake grows to $12.5 billion. I helped inflate those assets, but I didn't raise Jane's wages. The Fed says inflation's under control, but for who? Well, and don't get me started on debt. Big bank and global finance thrive on it. Mr. Patel's 5% mortgage means $1,000 of his $1,200 payment is interest. Pure profit for the bank. Ethan's Aspen loan at 2% is dirt cheap, letting him leverage his wealth to buy more. Jane, on the other hand, she's got a $500 credit card balance at 22% interest, racking up $110 a year in fees she can't escape. That's a ladder for the rich and a trap for the poor, and I'm greasing the rungs either way. I think about Jane sometimes. She held me for 3 days, March 19th to March 22nd, before I was gone. In that time, I gave her a flicker of hope, a moment where she didn't have to choose between rent and food. Now, 4 months later, I'm in Ethan Voss's orbit, a digit in a brokerage account or a fraction of a property deed. He doesn't know I exist, doesn't need to. I'm one of millions fueling his lifestyle: private jets, charity galas, a fourth Tesla in the garage. What bothers me most is how fast I left Jade. She's still out there working 25 hours a week at the grocery store, picking up extra shift when her son's daycare costs spike. Her $15 an hour is $31,200 a year before taxes, barely covering Cleveland's $12,000 annual rent average. The stimulus was a lifeline. but it's gone. Spent on necessities that didn't build her wealth. Meanwhile, I'm multiplying for Ethan. His $12 billion grew by 500 million this year, a 4.2% return without him breaking a sweat. That's 16,000 times Jane's income from assets I helped inflate. The numbers don't lie. In 2025, the top 1% hold 32% of U.S. wealth, $50 trillion, up from 29% a decade ago. The bottom 50%, people like Jane, hold 2.5% or $3.9 trillion. That's $1 trillion stimulus. If evenly split, it'd give each of the 125 million households $8,000, not $1,000. But even then, most of it would flow upward, just like Ivan. Jane would pay rent, Mr. Battelle would pay his mortgage, and I'd end up with elite capital or Ethan anyway. The system's rigged, not by malice, but by design. I'm not naive. I know money's a tool, not a moral agent. But I can't shake the feeling that I was meant for more than this. Jane needed me, and I was there, briefly. Now I'm a ghost in a machine, boosting balance sheets for people who'd never notice if I vanished. The wealthy got wealthier because of me, because of that $1 trillion, because that's where the system sends me, and I hate it. It's October 1st, 2025, and I'd been bouncing around the upper echelons of wealth for months now. After my stint in Ethan Voss's neurotech stock and his Aspen Chalet loan, I've lost any clear sense of where I am. The financial system's a blender, chopping and mixing dollars like me into a smoothie of profit. But I've got a hunch about my latest stop. Somewhere along the line, maybe in a dividend payout or a stock sale, I slipped out of Ethan's direct orbit and into a new one, an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I'm part of a $5 million wire transfer elite capital sent to a shell company, Blue Horizon Limited, on September 15th. It's a tax dodge, plain and simple. Rebecca Lang's hedge fund raked in $300 million in profits this year, and they're not keen on Uncle Sam taking 37% off the top. So they funnel it through Blue Horizon, a paper entity with no employees, just a P.O. box and a lawyer in Georgetown. I'm now sitting in a Cayman bank, accruing 1% interest in a money market fund, safe, quiet, untaxed. The account's tied to a trust benefiting Rebecca's kids, ensuring their private school tuitions and future yacht purchases are secure. I'm not alone here. Trillions of dollars hide in places like this. $32 trillion globally by some 2025 estimates, with $2 trillion from the U.S. alone. The stimulus that birthed me was meant to juice the American economy, but I've ended up offshore, out of reach. Jane's $1,000 is a faded memory, spent and gone, while I'm parked in paradise, serving no one but the ultra-rich. It's a quiet life, digital, dormant, waiting for the next tax-free withdrawal. Maybe I'll fund a beachfront condo in Miami next year, or a donation to a political campaign that keeps the loopholes open. Either way, my days of helping Jane are over. 9 months in, and I've seen enough to judge. I started with Jane, a woman stretched thin by rent and survival, and now I'm a footnote in a billionaire's tax shelter. How did I get here? It's not just bad luck, it's the way the system's built. That $1 trillion stimulus in March 2025 was sold as a lifeline for the Janes of the world, but it was a rocket booster for the Ethans and Rebeccas. Let me break it down one last time from my perch in the Caymans. Start with intent. Congress and the Fed pumped out that trillion to stimulate demand. Jane got her $1,000 and spent it. $900 on rent, $100 on groceries, and a pair of shoes for her son. That's demand, right? But it's fleeting. Her landlord, Mr. Patel, spent most of his cut on his mortgage, and the rest trickled up: banks, funds, stocks, real estate. By the time I hit elite capital, I wasn't stimulating anything tangible. I was inflating asset prices. The S&P 500's at 6,200 now, up 200 points since March. Home prices in Cleveland hit $250,000, a 4% jump in 6 months. Jane's rents creeping toward $950, and her wages still $15 an hour. The wealthy don't spend like Jane. Ethan Voss doesn't rush out to buy groceries with his $500 million gain. He reinvests it, buys more assets, or stashes it offshore like me. Rebecca Lane's $5 million bonus doesn't hit Main Street. It funds a second home in the Hamptons. The top 1% save or invest 40% of their income, while the bottom 50% spend 95% just to live. When new money floods in, it flows through the poor in pools with the rich, because that's where the system directs it. Asset ownership is the key. In 2025, the top 10% owns 70% of the stocks, 80% of real estate, 90% of bonds. The bottom 50%, less than 5% of stocks, 10% of home equity, almost no bonds. That $1 trillion juiced asset values. Stocks up 10%, homes up 5%, but wages grew just 2%. Lagging inflation's 4%. Jane's $31,200 a year buys less, while Ethan's $12 billion became $12.5 billion without him lifting a finger. I helped make that happen, and it stings. Policy's complicit. Low interest rates, 1.5% in 2025, make borrowing cheap for banks and billionaires, not Jane. Tax loopholes let Rebecca hide me offshore, while Jane's $1,000 was taxed before it hit her account. The Fed's bond buying props up markets, not paychecks. Even the stimulus was skewed. $1,000 flat for everyone sounds fair, but it's a rounding error for the rich and a lifeline for the poor that vanishes too fast. The system's not broken for Ethan or Rebecca. It's working exactly as designed. I'm settled now, a digital ghost in the Cayman account, my journey done. It's December 31st, 2025, and I've been alive for 9 months and 12 days. I started with Jane, a flicker of hope in her bank app, and ended here, a tax-free digit for a hedge fund heiress I'll never meet. Along the way, I saw the world, or at least the money part of it. From Cleveland's rental triplexes to Manhattan's trading floors, from Neurotech's stock ticker to an Aspen chalet. I've been a pawn in a game where the wealthy always win. I think about Jane often. She's still out there, bringing up groceries, counting pennies, hoping for another stimulus that might not come. Her rent's $925 now. Her son's shoes are wearing thin, and inflation's nibbling at her $15 an hour pay. The $1 trillion that birthed me gave her 30 days of relief, $33 a day before I slipped away. Compare that to Ethan Voss, whose wealth grew $500 million, or $1.37 million a day. In the same year, I was one of millions of dollars that made that gap wider, and I can't unsee it. What's my fate? I'll sit here, maybe for years, until Rebecca's trust needs me. I might fund a private jet or a political lobbying firm, something lavish or self-serving. I won't see Jane again. Won't help Mr. Patel fix his leaky roof. Won't buy a kid's shoes in Cleveland. I'm locked in the vault of the elite, a prisoner of a system that turns aid for the poor into wealth for the rich. If I could speak, not just narrate, but really speak. I tell the world to rethink this. Cash injections like me sound noble, but they're band-aids on a gash that needs stitches. Give Jane $1,000 and it's gone in a month. Give her a stake, land, stock, a home, and she might climb. Tax the Ethans and Rebeccas, close the Cayman loopholes, cap the asset bubbles I fuel. Make money stick where it's needed, not flow where it's hoarded. I'm just a dollar, I know. I don't make the rules, but I've seen where I go, and it's not where I'm needed the most. So here I am, December 31st, 2025, watching the year tick over from a server in Georgetown. Fireworks light up the sky somewhere, but not for me. I'm a tool, a means to an end, and my end is this: a quiet, tax-free exile, far from the hands that first held me. Jane's out there, starting 2026 with the same struggles, while Ethan and Rebecca toast their gains. I helped them, not her, because that's what dollars do in 2025. And that's the story I'll carry, silent and still, until I'm spent again. And that is the story of the dollar getting injected into the system, how the wealthy get wealthier through money printing, essentially. So once again, if you like the channel, please subscribe. Always looking for suggestions on what to do next. I thought this was a cool exercise. Got to see what AI is like and how creative it can be. It's a very good story, and hopefully it helps people understand the story of how money getting printed and injected into the system ends up in the wealthy's hands. Until next time.